Alien doctors replaced the human's blood. Then the impossible happened. The round hit me before I even heard the weapon fire. 1 second I was moving through the corridor of the downed shuttle, and the next second I was on the floor with my back against the wall and a burning, spreading cold working its way through my chest that felt nothing like any pain I had experienced before. Not sharp, not hot, just cold, deep, radiating cold, like someone had poured ice water directly into my lungs. My name is Claire Voss. I am a sergeant in the 3rd Interspecies Liaison Battalion, and I had just taken a Kreth oxidation round to the chest, on a moon with no name and no mercy. My squad mate Kevin dropped beside me in seconds. He pressed his hands to my chest, looked at my face, and I watched the color drain from his own. Kevin had been in combat longer than almost anyone in our unit. He did not scare easily. The fact that he looked scared told me everything. "Stay with me," he said. The Veltani ship answered. "They are 3 minutes out." 3 minutes felt like a very long time. The Kreth did not use conventional rounds. Their weapons released a compound on impact that attacked hemoglobin directly, bonding to red blood cells and locking them shut so they could no longer carry oxygen. You did not bleed out. You did not suffer organ damage from the impact. You simply stopped being able to breathe properly, from the inside, at a cellular level, while your heart kept pumping, and your lungs kept moving, and your body did everything it was supposed to do, except the one thing that mattered. It was a slow, efficient, and deeply cruel way to fight. The Veltani medics reached me in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I know because I counted. They moved fast, which surprised me. The Veltani are tall, thin, 6-armed, and covered in iridescent plating that shifts color based on their emotional state. I had worked alongside them for 8 months, and I still sometimes forgot how capable they were because they looked so fragile. They did not look fragile that day. They swept me onto a transport field and had me aboard their flagship, the Resonance of Deep Waters, before I had finished processing what was happening. The medical bay was enormous and cold, and lit in soft blue light. The lead physician was a Veltani, named Sivek, and he had been practicing medicine for over 90 years by human count. He examined my readings for about 45 seconds, and then he turned to me with the particular stillness that I had learned, meant he was choosing his words carefully. "The compound has affected approximately 70% of your red blood cells," he said through his vocalizer. "The damage is not reversible through filtration. The compromised cells will continue to block oxygenation as long as they remain in your body." "So, what do we do?" I asked. "We replace the fluid entirely," he said. "We have a synthetic circulatory medium. It carries oxygen mechanically, without relying on biological cells. It is compatible with 73 known species. It will sustain you until we can transfer you to a human medical facility." He paused. "It is not blood. It does not function exactly like blood, but it will keep you alive." "How long is the transfer?" 31 hours. I was not in a position to say no. I said yes. The procedure took 38 minutes. They removed every drop of blood from my body and replaced it with their synthetic medium. The junior medic assisting Sivek was younger, with brighter frills that flickered constantly. I started thinking of her as Nell, because her actual name had 4 syllables that involved throat sounds my vocal cords could not reproduce. She monitored my readings the entire time with the focused attention of someone who understood the stakes and refused to blink. I felt the change happen. It was not painful. It was strange. My body went from warm to cool in a way that felt like the transition between rooms, like stepping from a heated space into a hallway where the air was simply neutral. My hands looked the same. My face felt the same. But the warmth that had been underneath everything, that quiet background hum of a living body, went quiet. "Oxygen saturation is climbing," Nell said to Sivek. "The medium is circulating well." "Good," Sivek said, and he looked at me. "You should sleep. Your body will be under less demand while you rest." "Understood," I said. I slept. I woke up to alarm sounds I did not recognize. They were not emergency alarms. They were softer, repetitive, the kind of sound a system makes when it detects something outside expected parameters, rather than something immediately dangerous. I sat up on the medical platform and Sivek was already in the room, along with Nell and 2 other members of the medical team, and all of them were standing in front of the data display on the far wall, with their neck frills absolutely still. In Velthani body language, Still frills mean deep concentration. The kind of focus that comes when something is refusing to make sense. What is happening? I asked. Civic turned to me slowly. His eyes were wide, which for a Velthani indicated genuine surprise rather than alarm. Your body, he said carefully, is producing hemoglobin. I looked at him. That is what my body does. Sergeant Voss? He pulled up a scan on the wall display, a full interior map of my circulatory system with dozens of active readings. We removed all of your red blood cells, every single one. Compromised cells, healthy cells, all of them replaced completely with our circulatory medium. Your bone marrow was producing new cells at an unremarkable baseline rate when we completed the procedure 4 hours ago. He pointed to a cluster of readings that were trending sharply upward. It is no longer unremarkable. Nell spoke without looking away from the display. Your body is producing red blood cells at approximately 900% above your species' documented baseline rate. The new cells appear healthy. They are integrating with the circulatory medium. They are beginning to take over oxygen transport. I looked at my hands again. They were warmer than they had been when I woke up the first time. Here is something about human beings that takes a while to understand if you did not grow up on Earth. We come from a planet that spent millions of years in an active, ongoing effort to end us. Ice ages, predators, parasites, solar radiation, diseases that could rewrite our cells, wounds that would have been fatal to almost any other creature in the galaxy. We did not survive because we were the strongest, or the fastest, or the most intelligent species in our ecosystem. We survived because our biology is built around one core assumption: things will go wrong, and we need to keep going anyway. Our immune system runs continuous, active patrols as a default state. Our skin can absorb damage from the sun and use it to build a shield against further sun damage. Our adrenaline system can override pain signals so completely that people have run on broken legs without realizing it. We heal wounds in our sleep. We fight infections with fevers that would kill a smaller creature. And our bone marrow, the part of us responsible for producing blood, has a crisis response mode that most species in the interspecies compact did not know existed because no other species had ever been put in a situation where a doctor removed every single red blood cell and waited to see what happened. My body had not accepted the absence as a permanent state. My body had treated it as an emergency and responded accordingly. Is this harming you? Civic asked. His voice was measured, but there was something underneath it, a quality I had not heard from him before. The accelerated production. Are you in pain? No, I said honestly. I feel warm, like after exercise. You feel warm, he repeated. Is that a problem? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked back at the display. By our current projections, he said slowly, your body will have reconstituted a fully functional red blood cell supply within 6 hours, without any external stimulus, without any medical intervention, simply because it detected the absence and responded to it. He turned back to me. We have used this circulatory medium to treat patients from 11 species over 2 centuries. No other species has ever done this. What do the others do? I asked. They wait, he said simply. They are sustained by the medium until we can provide proper treatment at a facility. They do not begin producing replacements on their own. They do not detect the absence and decide to solve it. He was quiet for a moment. We designed the medium to be a solution, a scaffold that holds a patient stable until real medicine can be administered. For every patient we have ever treated, that is what it remained. He looked at me, the way a person looks at something that has changed their understanding of a subject they believed they already knew well. For you, he said, it appears the scaffold was not a solution. It was a challenge. I laughed. I could not help it. It came out before I could stop it, genuine and startled. That is possibly the most accurate description of human beings I have ever heard. Nell's frills lit up. She had been quietly recording everything. Explain, she said. You built something to hold us up, I said, and our body looked at it and decided that holding itself up was its own job, and that your help, while appreciated, was ultimately unnecessary. I shook my head. Every human on Earth would recognize that response. We do it constantly. It is practically cultural at this point, and apparently it goes all the way down to the cellular level. Cyvek recorded something on his datapad. He was very still again, but differently than before. Not confused anymore. Processing. There are implications, he said. If we could model the trigger response in your bone marrow, the specific mechanism that causes this level of emergency production, it might be applicable to other treatments. The rate of reconstitution you are demonstrating right now, if we could synthesize or stimulate that in other species, it could change how we approach blood loss across dozens of different biologies. You want to study my bone marrow to save lives, I said. Many lives, he confirmed. Many kinds of lives. I told him he had my full cooperation. Kevin came to check on me 3 hours later. He found me sitting up, eating a synthesized protein meal that tasted like absolutely nothing, and looking considerably better than he had any reason to expect. He stood in the doorway of the medical bay and stared at me with the expression of a man who had mentally prepared for a very different conversation. They told me what happened, he said finally. Which part? All of it. He sat down on the bench near the door. They said your body just started making new blood. Yes. By itself. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Why are you not more surprised by this?" I thought about it honestly. I think because I have always known that human beings are harder to finish than most species expect. I just did not know it went this far down. I looked at my hands. The warmth was still there, steady and spreading. The feeling of a body operating at full capacity after a period of being rationed. It is strange to feel it happening, to know that right now, somewhere inside me, there is a process running flat out, because it identified a crisis and refused to wait for someone else to fix it. That does sound like you, Kevin said. It sounds like all of us, I told him. Nell appeared in the doorway behind Kevin a moment later, frills bright, data recorder active. She had been checking my readings every 30 minutes. She did not try to hide the fact that she found me fascinating, which I respected. A scientist who hides their curiosity is wasting everyone's time. Your cell count has passed 40% of baseline, she said. The integration with the circulatory medium is seamless. The new cells and the synthetic medium are cooperating without any conflict. She paused. Your oxygen saturation is currently reading above the human standard maximum. Kevin looked at her. What does that mean? It means, she said carefully, that her body overcorrected. It produced more than it needed, as though it was not willing to stop at sufficient, and decided to aim for excessive instead, just to be certain. Kevin looked at me. I looked back at him. Yes, I said. That also sounds like all of us. The next 27 hours were quiet by the standards of what had come before. I ate, I slept, I answered Civic's questions, which were detailed and numerous, and clearly the work of a physician who had encountered something that was going to occupy him for years. He asked about human evolutionary history, about our immune system, about how we experienced physical damage and recovery. I answered everything I could and told him honestly when I did not know, which led to him pulling documented research and reading it aloud in his careful, measured voice, while Nell took notes and I ate more of the flavorless protein and felt steadily, insistently, more like myself. By the time we reached the human medical station, my blood work was, according to the attending physician who ran my intake, completely normal. Not recovering, not trending toward normal. Normal, as though nothing had happened, except for a note in my biochemical readings that my red blood cell count had briefly exceeded standard maximum before settling back down to baseline. My body had overbuilt and then corrected. It had produced more than enough, assessed that it had done so, and pulled back to where it needed to be. The intake physician, a quiet man named Dr. Arthur Lamb, who had clearly seen a great deal in his career, read through Civic's documentation 3 times before he said anything. "This is extraordinary," he said finally. "That's what they kept telling me," I said. "Do you understand what happened?" "My bone marrow decided not to wait," I said. He looked at me over the top of the data pad. "Your bone marrow detected total red blood cell depletion and triggered a crisis response that your species' medical literature does not document at this magnitude. The Velthani physician estimates the response began within 90 minutes of procedure completion." He set the pad down. 90 minutes, Sergeant Voss. "Your body identified a total blood loss scenario and began rebuilding at a rate that, by my reading of this data, would take most medical facilities a full day to replicate artificially." "How long would it take for a Velthani patient in the same situation?" I asked. He checked the documentation. "They do not have an equivalent response. They would rely entirely on the synthetic medium until treatment. Right, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You should know that Dr. Sivek has already submitted a research request to the Compact Medical Exchange. He wants to run a formal study, controlled conditions, full documentation, comparative biology across species." He looked at me. "He cited your case as the basis. He is calling it preliminary evidence of what he calls adaptive biological extremism in human physiology." I had heard those words before. Sivek had used them on the ship, and I had liked them then too. Biological extremism, I said. He means we do not know when to stop. He means, Dr. Lamb said, that your body does not have a neutral setting. It does not wait to see if things will balance out on their own. It detects a problem and commits completely to solving it. He picked up the datapad again. He described it as a body built to argue with circumstances it does not agree with. I walked out of the medical station 2 hours later under my own power. The sky above the station was the pale gray of a world that rarely saw direct sunlight, and the air was cold and carried the faint metallic smell of processed atmosphere. I stood outside for a minute and just breathed, feeling my lungs fill, and the oxygen move through blood that my own body had built from nothing in 6 hours. Kevin was waiting by the transport. He handed me a coffee, real coffee, which meant he had gone out of his way to find it, and I took it with both hands and held it and felt the warmth of it. "Sivek sent a message," Kevin said. "Wants to know if you would be willing to participate in the formal study?" "Tell him yes." "Already did." He looked at me sideways. "You know they are going to write about you. Medical papers. Probably xenobiology papers too. You might end up in textbooks." "Good," I said. "Let them write about it." We walked toward the transport. The coffee was strong and slightly bitter, and exactly what I needed. "Do you think they were underestimating us?" Kevin asked. "The Veltantani, the other species in the compact, do you think they had the wrong picture of what we are?" I thought about Sivek standing in front of that data display with his frills completely still, watching a graph climb that had no right to climb. I thought about Nell recording everything with the intensity of someone watching history happen in real time. I thought about a synthetic circulatory medium that had been designed as a solution and had been treated by my body as an obstacle. "They had an accurate picture," I said. "They just did not have the whole thing. They knew we were durable. They knew we healed well. They knew our military record." I drank the coffee. They did not know that the durability goes all the way down, that it is not a learned thing, or a cultural thing, or even a conscious thing. It is written into us at the most basic level. Our cells do not accept limits as permanent. Our bodies do not wait to be rescued. We are built, from the inside out, to look at the worst possible situation and start solving it before anyone has even asked us to. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That is either very inspiring or very terrifying, depending on which side of it you are on." "Both," I said. "It is definitely both." The transport lifted. Below us, the station grew smaller, and above us, the stars were already appearing in the darkening sky, clear and cold and countless. Somewhere in the Compact Medical Exchange, a Velthani physician was writing a paper that would eventually be read by doctors and researchers across dozens of worlds. It would document, in precise clinical language, the moment a human body was told it had no blood left, and responded by making more. It would describe the mechanism in careful terms, the crisis trigger, the overdrive response, the integration, the correction back to baseline. It would compare the human response to the 11 other species treated with the same procedure, and note that no comparison was possible because no comparison existed. It would suggest new research directions and new treatment protocols and new ways of understanding what human physiology was actually capable of under conditions of total resource depletion. And buried in the conclusion, in the measured voice of a physician who had practiced for 90 years and still managed to be surprised, it would say that the most significant finding of the study was not the rate of production or the efficiency of integration, but something simpler and harder to quantify. The human body, when stripped of everything it needed to survive, did not wait. It did not hope. It did not send a signal asking for help. It simply started building. I finished the coffee somewhere above the cloud line and watched the stars come out one by one, and I thought about all the people who had come before me. All the humans across all the generations who had survived things they should not have survived, who had kept moving through conditions that should have stopped them, who had built warmth from cold, and strength from damage, and new blood from nothing at all. We had been doing this for a very long time. We just did not always know the language for it. Now, somewhere in a research archive that would be read by species we had not yet met, we had one word that covered all of it: persistence.